Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality. My name is Jana Kennard, and I'm your worship leader this morning. I'm glad you are joining us for the service today. It is my hope that this gathering will renew your sense of community and connection and nourish your heart, mind, and spirit. Special thanks to all our service participants today, especially our AV team volunteers, host Caroline Nixon, and co-hosts Cindy Fountain and Donald Kennard. Also, a huge thank you to all the other Westside volunteers who make this service possible today. Our chalice lighter, Myrtle McMahon, pastoral care rep, Carol Kappa, Time for All Ages volunteer, Tanner Trask, meditation leader, Diane Austin, social justice chair, Cindy Fountain, as well as our invaluable staff at Westside, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Nikki Kennedy, pianist, Dr. Yuki Kumamoto, Office Administrator, Don McGee, and our sexton, Jean McKeon. At Westside, we are raising the next generation of Unitarian Universalists, and we want them to know that they are an important part of our community. Several years ago, we chose to be radically inclusive and to adopt a multi-generational worship service, where our services include all family members. So, welcome to all children and youth of all ages. Westside is a community of many beliefs, genders, and sexualities, a community of diverse cultural, racial, and class backgrounds, a community of varied abilities and gifts. Some here find inspiration in the great books, others in the great outdoors, and others still in great conversations. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. If you are so moved and haven't already, please try out the chat feature on Zoom by typing in some words of welcome to both members and visitors who are joining us this morning. On behalf of this church community, I say to all, welcome. Our guest in the virtual pulpit this morning is Reverend Marti Keller. Reverend Marti has been a parish, community, and social justice minister for more than 23 years. Her Unitarian involvements include co-editing the book, Jewish Voices in Unitarian Universalism, and other UUA publications around the Jewish source of our living tradition. She has been the president of UUs for Jewish Awareness and is currently a board member. She is part of a ministerial team launching an online Musar Jewish Values program in 2022. In addition to her UU Jewish connections, she served on the executive board of the Society for Humanistic Judaism and is on the advisory committee for the International Secular Synagogue. Hanukkah, the Jewish Festival of Lights, begins this evening at sundown, and Reverend Marti's reflection, Hidden Lights, Past and Present, is an exploration of the seemingly simple act of lighting candles, which has been both dangerous and courageous. Now, I invite you all to take a deep breath, and from wherever you are, settle into the sacred space that we create, and let us worship together as we listen to this morning's prelude performed by our pianist, Dr. Yuki Kumamoto. Our opening words this morning will be read by Reverend Marti Keller.
The opening reading today is by Marilyn Rowans, who's a matriga, or a spiritual leader of a Jewish humanistic congregation, and it's titled The 8 Lights of Hanukkah. The first light is the light of reason. It's the light of reason that teaches us to see the differences between right and wrong. The second light is the light of self-esteem. It's the light of self-esteem that inspires us to believe in ourselves. The third light, and the light we'll be focusing on a lot this morning, is the light of courage. It's the light of courage that gives us the strength to stand up for our beliefs. The fourth light is the light of freedom. It's the light of freedom that reminds us to take responsibility for our own lives. The fifth light is the light of love. It's the light of love that enables us to care for those in need. The sixth light is the light of loyalty. It's the light of loyalty that helps us keep our promises to those who depend on us. The seventh light is the light of generosity. It's the light of generosity that encourages us to give even if we do not receive. And the last and the eighth light is the light of hope. It's the light of hope that leads us to a vision of a better world. In this spirit, may we be gathered.
Our opening hymn this morning is Meod Zur, or Rock of Ages, sung by the Canadian Council for Reform Judaism Cantors. The paraphrased English translation will be in the chat. This morning's chalice will be lit live by Myrtle McMahon. The flaming chalice is our Unitarian Universalist symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this congregation today. If you have a chalice at home, please light it with us.
Radiant is the light of the world. Radiant is the light within each person. Radiant is the light of Hanukkah.
The chalice lighting song is Be the Light, written and sung by Leah Morris and inspired by the poem The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman.
There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill. Together we will. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always your light. There is always we are ready to see it. There is always your light. There is always we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always dark. To see the light, to be the light, to shine in the dark of night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always shine. There is always dark. There is always shine. There is always dark. Be the light.
Please join me in reciting our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Our Time for All Ages today will be presented by Westside member Tanner Trask.
Thank you and good morning. We are observing many special occasions today, and I wanted to make sure that we also observed World AIDS Day and a very special person who helped bring awareness in the very early days of HIV/AIDS, Princess Diana. Once upon a time, all the way back in the 1980s, there lived a princess in the faraway United Kingdoms of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, Princess Diana. Princess Diana lived in an old castle at the center of the kingdom. She was married to the crown prince, and all the people of her realm believed her to be the happiest person alive. But Princess Diana didn't want to sit in her castle and throw parties for her family. She wanted to help people around the world, and so she did. And one of the ways that she helped was this. In the 1980s, we became aware of a very serious disease called HIV/AIDS. This disease attacked the immune system and it could spread very quickly. People were very afraid of HIV/AIDS, and they were even more afraid of the people that had it. So Princess Diana chose to help speak out for people who were living with HIV/AIDS. She even met with them, and she shook their hands without wearing gloves. This was safe to do, but so many people were afraid to do even that, even some doctors and nurses. Now, what most doctors and nurses knew back then was that HIV/AIDS spreads through people's blood or other bodily fluids. So being in the same room with someone with HIV/AIDS was safe. Shaking their hand was safe. Giving them a hug was safe. But so many people were afraid to do any of those things because maybe they didn't understand it. Maybe they didn't trust the doctors and nurses and scientists that told them how the disease worked. But that's why Princess Diana did this work. And this picture is actually a very famous picture of her shaking hands with an HIV/AIDS patient. And now it's our turn. And today, many people are wearing red ribbons in honor of World AIDS Day to show support for people living with HIV and to commemorate those who have died from an AIDS-related illness. And we have good news. Each year we learn of scientists and doctors and nurses and medical professionals and researchers coming up with new treatments for these diseases that can help people with them live longer lives, healthier lives, and happier lives with their friends and family. So, as we give thanks to the doctors, to the nurses, to the researchers, to the scientists, and to all the people that help others with HIV/AIDS, I also wanted to take a moment and say thank you to a princess who lived all the way across the ocean, all the way back in the 1980s. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Tanner. World AIDS Day for 2021 is this Wednesday, December 1st. Either rock your red ribbon or wear red to honor World AIDS Day this year. Our joys and concerns will be shared by Carol Kappa, a representative of our pastoral care team.
Good morning. We're grateful that you're here with us for this service. And is that time in our service when we share joys and concerns. While we continue to meet online, anyone can still submit a joy or a concern by emailing it to our pastoral care team. Our email address is pastoralcare@westsideu.org. Or you can submit it through the web form on our Westside webpage. You go to the program tab and then click on care and support. As we share our joys and concerns with those, the joys are multiplied. When our hearts know our joy shines all the brighter. And as we share our concerns, our community can offer its care. When other hearts know our sorrows, our burden becomes lighter. This is the time in our service when we offer witness and support for one another's journeys. This week's joys and concerns received by 10 a.m. this morning include 2 joys. The first one is from Caroline Nixon. She's thinking of her grandmother. This is Diane Nixon's mother. Today would have been her birthday. And even though she passed away some 20 years ago, they still think about her very fondly. And the other joy from Caroline is for flu vaccines, and that they really do work, because even though her son Isaac was asked to get one many times, he did not. So he came down and caught the flu. But Jeff, Caroline, and Cadence did not get it. So they want to share that joy today. So thank you for sharing those joys with us. It's always good to share with one another as sharing draws our community closer. And please, we want you to know that the Pastoral Care Associates are here and available to support you with deep listening and, when needed, through our InReach Fund for short-term financial support of members in need. We are here for you.
Thank you, Carol. This morning's centering song is Voice Still and Small, lyrics by John Corrado, sung by music director Anna Hamilton of the UU Congregation of Columbia, South Carolina. Diane Austin will then lead our meditation of shared compassion.
Ooh, ooh. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
I invite you to join me in a time of centering. Each week here at Westside, we open our hearts to those in our community who know both joys and challenges, and to all who are suffering. I will begin with a reading before we move into a time for silent reflection. A bell will sound to signal the start of the time for your own meditation, prayer, or reflection, and it will sound again at the end. As Tanner mentioned, this time of year, there are many things to commemorate and celebrate. November has been Native American Heritage Month. So in honor of that heritage, I will read a part of the Mohawk Prayer of Thanks. A millennium ago, the original 6 tribes of the Northwest U.S. were at war with each other until the great peacemaker came, and gradually with his words and actions helped the people form a 6-nation council for making peaceful choices together. Mohawks are one of the tribes in the 6-nation confederacy. Their understanding of how to live in peace and harmony is reflected in their prayer of thanksgiving, which they offered every morning. The following is a portion of that prayer. Today we have gathered together to acknowledge that we have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living beings. Now our minds are one. We gather our minds together to greet and give thanks to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us everything we need to live a good life. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. Now our minds are one. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and for providing food for the plant life. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the spirit water. Now our minds are one. With one mind, we turn to honor and thank all the plants. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, berries, and medicinal herbs have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the foods together as one and send them a greeting and thanks. Now our minds are one. We gather our minds together to send greetings and thanks to all the animal life in the world. They have many things to teach us as people. Now our minds are one. Our thoughts now turn to the sky. We send greetings and thanks to our eldest brother, the sun, who is the source of life. Each day without fail, he travels the sky from east to west, bringing the light of a new day. With the sun, we can see the perfect gifts for which we are grateful. Now our minds are one. We put our minds together and give thanks to our oldest grandmother, the moon, who lights the nighttime sky. She is the leader of women all over the world, and she governs the movement of the ocean tides. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to our grandmother, the moon. Now our minds are one. We gather our minds to greet and thank the enlightened teachers who have come to help throughout the ages. When we forget how to live in harmony, they remind us of the way we were instructed to live as people. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to these caring teachers. Now our minds are one. We send greetings and thanks for all the gifts of creation. Everything we need is here. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. May it be so, blessed be, and amen.
Thank you, Diane. Good morning, Westside. This is Cindy Fountain, your social justice rep. Westside's plate offering for November is the AFIA Center. The AFIA Center is the only reproductive justice organization in North Texas founded and directed by Black women. It was established in response to the increasing disparities between HIV incidents worldwide and the extraordinary prevalence of HIV among Black women and girls in Texas.
It recognizes that this intersects with reproductive justice. On its website, the Afia Center explains that we are transforming the lives, health, and overall well-being of Black women and girls by providing refuge, education, and resources. We act to ignite the communal voices of Black women, resulting in our full achievement of reproductive freedom. The Afia Center does this through such programs as LOL, Living Out Loud with a Purpose, a trauma-informed, peer-driven targeting Black cisgender and transgender women living with HIV, and Support Your Sister, which assists people seeking abortion care with transportation and childcare costs. You may be familiar with Ms. Marcia Jones, who's a co-founder and the executive director of the Afia Center. Ms. Jones travels to Austin regularly, speaking tirelessly for maternal health care, access to abortion, and all forms of health care, which our state makes unjustly out of reach for so many. As Martha Jones says, the denial of health care in any form is a violation of human rights. Westside has affirmed that Black Lives Matter. Let's give as we can to an organization that is fully centering Black lives. You can give online now through the church's giving page or by using the Vanco mobile app. Select the Sunday Plate Offering Fund, and the link will be put in the chat. You can also mail a check to the church, and thank you for your offering as we enjoy this musical offering from Yuki.
Thank you again so much for your generosity. And now please turn your attention to Hidden Lights, Past and Present by Reverend Marti, Keller.
The German synagogue melody, Rock of Ages, led our song. Rock of Ages, let our song praise your saving power. You amid the raging foes were our sheltering tower, kindling new the holy lamps, priest unbowed by suffering, purified the nation's shrine, kindling new the holy lamps. There it is, the central ritual imperative of the Jewish holiday, Hanukkah, the light of 8 candles, light in a menorah, one for each night. There are other parts of Hanukkah, foods, games, family rituals, but the critical part, the critical central aspect of Hanukkah is the candles. It's the candles that are critical. Last year on our neighborhood Facebook page, a Jewish woman in the middle of the pandemic wrote that somehow she and her husband had forgotten to check on the status of their Hanukkah candles from the previous year, how many they had left in the box, and discovered when they finally checked that they had only had 2 days worth left. They had purchased them last year, only 2 days left, that when it was easier just to ride around from store to store at the last moment until you found some. When it was more, in fact, even possible to consider driving 50 or 20 minutes to borrow some extra candles from your cousins, maybe even have a drop-in visit. By the end of the day, fortunately, she had called around and she found a small supply remaining at the local Publix. So her holiday, her holy day disaster, was blessedly averted. Because you see, Hanukkah does call for 36 candles, 8 for each night of this Festival of Lights, and actually 44, because you have to include the kindling lights, to mark an ancient winter festival for the Jewish people. Like many religious festivals, Hanukkah stems from a pagan festival that turned into a minor, and it was really for many years a very minor commemoration of a guerrilla war of liberation from oppression and religious degradation, at least according to those guerrillas, and increasingly has burst into a more major and commercialized celebration, complete with this miracle of the one lamp, the one light that should have lasted one day, 24 hours, lasting for 8 whole days, long enough for them to secure the temple and win their victory. And a gambling game with spinning tops and dreidels and the gelt and the gifts and all the things that have become beloved, especially for small children, especially around Christmas. I had gone through the same candle crisis the week before, finding only 4 forlorn leftover candles in my old box, but I managed to secure some from Amazon just in time. Before that, I too had put out the call on social media, and I was so touched by the sweet notes from my Jewish friends and colleagues all over the country, some of them saying, "We wished you lived next door so we could just bring some over." And a rather stern message from a progressive rabbi colleague of mine who said, "Why are you beating yourself because you think you're going to fall short? Given what's going on now, you should use any candle you can find. Doesn't have to be candles from that set of candles from the grocery store that fit your particular menorah." After all, he reminded me, and I eventually reminded myself, the Jews in concentration camps in the midst of the Holocaust, the depth of the Holocaust, saved scraps of fat from their food and used loose threads to form makeshift wicks stuck in a carved sweet potato. That was their candles, that was their menorah, and they managed to keep this ritual going, this custom going, this symbol of Judaism and Jewishness going, despite where they were in time. Light is light. 8 nights of it, the simplest, holiest form of Hanukkah. I used to rail against reducing Hanukkah to just another festival of lights, a universal festival of lights. Now that I see its history is so troubled, its actual history, its mythical history, pitting orthodoxy versus hybrid culture, integration of culture, I think that troublesome aspects of Hanukkah and the militarism are in one place, but the miracle that is light prevails for me now. So yes, amidst the Holocaust horrors, historians tell us that many Jews still found ways to mark Hanukkah, keeping that holy light blazing over the century, wherever they were. There was little room for light, for example, in Theresienstadt, where some 140,000 Czech Jews came through the Nazi camp. It was like a human holding pen on the way to even worse. Almost 1 in 4 eventually succumbing to disease or starvation. Those who survived moving on to still more terrible places like Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Yet still, in 1942, late 1942, one inmate stole a large block of wood from a Nazi and carved what was described as an ornate Hanukkah, the special menorah or candle holder, which was quite impressive by all tellings. Other Jews in other ghettos and camps found ways to kindle a flame and still celebrate the holiday. In Warsaw, in the Warsaw ghetto, for example, behind closed curtains, joyfully lighting the family menorahs that would have to be left behind when they were either transported to some of these death camps or if they were caught and killed in the Warsaw Uprising. And later, after the war and liberation in Westerbork, a transit camp in the Netherlands, people living there making menorahs out of wood and aluminum foil with grease and cotton wicks serving as their candles. In another, a lamp made out of cartridge scraps and shell casings dedicated to the American military who had liberated them, not just the American military in general, but the specific general who had liberated them. And on the Hanukkah candle holder was inscribed, "A great miracle happened here." Not only that they could celebrate Hanukkah, but that they were alive to celebrate Hanukkah. Recent surveys have revealed how many younger people in particular have an astonishingly limited knowledge of the Holocaust, the genocide of millions of Jews and other people. Even fewer of any age place this horrific event in the context of thousands of years of systemic, violent persecution against a people whose holidays and life celebrations, whose public holidays and life celebrations made them vulnerable to brutal attacks, whose lights, by the necessity of survival, often did have to be hidden, but whose rituals were maintained in some fashion, generation after generation. Years before the final solution of the Jews, the plan to exterminate this entire population, families like mine and my husband lived in that fear and lived in the courage of maintaining those rituals. His grandmother from Romania brought a dingy brass menorah with her to this country, dingy, and a tea kettle, two things that we actually have. I don't know what else survived her. Leaving behind her drab Eastern European town where the Jews have largely vanished now, decimated first by the exodus to America and Israel to keep them safe, then by the Holocaust of the forest, where they did not go to camps, were actually murdered right outside the town walls, and by decades of communist repression, routinely persecuted for practicing their religion, for lighting candles, for celebrating Passover, for all of those rituals that made them who they were. A handful of Jewish people, a very few synagogues, survived, not quite completely broken after hundreds of years. Here and there, a menorah lit. Here and there. In 1998, Hanukkah was celebrated for the first time in Spain since its Jewish population was decimated by the Inquisition and expulsion more than 500 years ago. The ritual lighting of a 15-foot menorah on the 8th and final day in the old Jewish quarter of Girona in the town square attracted more than 1,000 people, including many non-Jews, because it was a demonstration of only recently established religious tolerance laws. Only in 1992 did Spain finally put Islam and Protestant Christianity and Judaism on equal footing with the Roman Catholic Church, with its predominant Catholicism and its centuries of cruel record of domination and subjugation. 1492, we know, was a terrible year for the native people in the Americas. It was also a terrible year for the Jewish people on the Iberian Peninsula as well. In Spain today, there may be 25,000 Jews compared with more than 200,000 when the Roman Catholic monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, issued what they called the Edict of Expulsion. They wanted Spain to be, in the Iberian Peninsula, to be entirely Roman Catholic, and ordered all Jews, even those who had converted to Christianity, to be able to remain in Spain. They were ordered to leave the country in 3 months' time. This followed years already of mob looting and destroying Jewish synagogues and homes, economic hardship, famine, this forced conversion, torture, and burning at the stake. Most of the Jews left for Portugal, out of which they were expelled 4 years later, and on to North Africa and Italy and France and England and other places from which they were also largely expelled, and wandered and wandered. The last Spanish Inquisition death was recorded in 1926, and the Office of Inquisition officially closed only in 1992 when the Olympics came to Barcelona, with offers, now largely very qualified or rescinded, of Spanish Spanish citizenship to the descendants of Sephardic Jews who were forced out centuries ago. Before COVID derailed this, my husband and I were set earlier this fall to attend a Rhodes Scholar course on the secret Jews who found their ways to the Americas, to New Mexico in the Southwest territories of what was called originally New Spain. Today there are 1,000 conversos, at least 1,500 families living in largely small Hispanic towns in the high desert communities around Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Writer Trudy Alexi tells us that the strength of their connections to Judaism and their own awareness of it vary greatly from family to family. Some of the obviously Jewish connected Jewish customs they continue to observe, she notes, have been so modified over time that they're barely recognizable. We've always done this, people would say. We're Catholics. We're devout Catholics. We've always done these things. We've always had these rituals, but there was very little remaining understanding of how directly they were related to Judaism and their Jewishness. While the official educational program was indeed called off, my husband and I made the trip and had the privilege of spending an entire afternoon with a rabbi, one of the instructors, and a non-denominational religious leader with deep connections to these conversos, whose hidden Jewish practices have included not working on the Sabbath, obviously a Jewish custom, not eating pork or pork products, a Jewish custom, having 2 sets of dishes, an Orthodox Jewish custom, praying 3 times a day facing east, putting Jewish symbols on their graves, and lighting long burning candles in church on Friday, on Shabbat, whose strategies for staying hidden in small Hispanic towns included appearing extra religious, extra Catholic, attending Mass scrupulously, regularly, having a priest as a member of their family, and keeping pigs as pets so as not to draw so much attention to why they did not eat pig meat. After 20 generations, they have continued to persist, even after being chased by the Inquisition into the New Land, even after years of hiding their identity, of imprisonment and torture, of burnings, even in the New Land, looking always over their shoulders. Many of them remaining still devout Catholics, even when they learn they have Jewish roots. Some of them, though, emerging, approaching local synagogues, not knowing even what it might mean to be a member, to be a real Jewish, religiously observant Jew, and navigating the complicated religious and cultural identities that come with this. Keeping the courage memory intact, the courage of maintaining rituals, and the fear memory as well, hiding these in order to survive, especially in the face of an overwhelming Catholic hierarchy in New Mexico, and the current persistent anti-Semitism there and really all over. Dov Wilker, a regional director of the American Jewish Committee, wrote recently an opinion column about rising Jewish hatred on our streets, in our schools, and expressed by elected officials across the political spectrum. This may explain, he proposed, why 90% of American Jews believe that anti-Semitism is a problem in this country, and why an overwhelming majority of them, 82%, say it's increased over the last 5 years, according to the 2021 American Jewish Committee report on anti-Semitism, which was released 3 years after the Tree of Life synagogue massacre in Pittsburgh, the single deadliest attack on Jewish people in this country in our history. Sadly, almost a quarter of the surveyed Jews have avoided publicly wearing or carrying or displaying items that might help people identify them as being Jewish. Their lights, literally and metaphorically, still being hidden. In my town, a town that for 30 years, beginning early in the 20th century, basically barred Jews from living there, next to another town that only permitted white Christians to be residents, it's written in their town charter, there are beginning to be more Jewish people. I was pleasantly surprised recently that the neighborhood elementary school is offering Hanukkah candles in their holiday gift catalog. And when I picked up my box from a Jewish woman, she was surprised that I was surprised they were in there. My son, who's 35 years old and grew up in that school system as a Jewish kid, there was no way that that catalog would have been as inclusive. Nonetheless, there are Jewish families in this town who don't understand why only Christmas lights and wreaths are city-sponsored, city-paid, while Hanukkah and their holiday rituals are not being honored in what they believed and still believe is a diverse town. When asked on social media whether Jewish families intended to place their menorahs on their windows, some said emphatically no, it felt too dangerous. This even with the fear memory of a family in Billings, Montana some years back, when Black, Native American, and Jewish families became the targets of intimidation. When a brick through the window of a 6-year-old Jewish boy who had placed his family menorah in the living room window led to 10,000 menorahs in Billings, Montana, placed in windows, Jews and non-Jews alike standing against hate and bigotry. The Anti-Defamation League urges us, Jews and non-Jews alike, to keep light continuing to shine bright long after the 8 days of Hanukkah. They remind us that while the Hanukkah wax might drip and the wick burn away, the opportunity for multi-community collaboration is wide open to build safer and more inclusive communities. Because silence is acceptance, our response must be quick and clear. We must let people who have been harmed know that they are not alone. We must make our stand against hate broadly visible for as long as possible, and we must not back down. What is the definition of courage? The state or quality of mind or spirit that enables one to face danger and fear or vicissitudes with self-possession, confidence, and resolution. The definition of courage is to be a light.
To learn more about Hanukkah in the Warsaw Ghetto on December 26, 1940, how 10,000 menorahs helped Billings, Montana defeat hate, and 5 ideas to guide community response to hate, please see the video story links dropped in the chat today, or find them in our upcoming Westside Weekly. Our closing hymn this morning is Light One Candle, performed by Peter, Paul, and Mary at their 2014 PBS Holiday Concert.
Light one candle for the Maccabee children, with thanks that their light didn't die. And light one candle for the pain they endured, when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. Light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. And light one candle for those who are suffering pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, let anger not tear us apart. And light one candle to bind us together, with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our dreams. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years.
Okay, y'all, I thought I was going to make it through this service without crying, but we all know better than that. Our closing words this morning will be read by Reverend Marti.
The closing words for today are from Rabbi Sherman Wein, the late Rabbi Sherman Wein, who founded the Society for Humanistic Judaism in this country. It's on courage again. Courage is the power to confront a world that is not always fair. It is a refusal to beg for what will never be given. It is a willingness to accept what cannot be changed. Courage is loving life even in the face of death. It is sharing our strength with others, even when we are feeling weak. It is embracing our family and friends, even when we fear to lose them. It is opening ourselves up to love. At this time of candles against the darkness, may we know courage.
Please join me in the congregational closing as we extinguish our chalices. Let us go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace in our lives and in the world. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. And we have an exciting announcement for today. Please send in a picture of you hanging the green